Okay, in this tutorial what I want to go through is how you can get from having a good quality line drawing vector illustration in Adobe Illustrator to converting this into a more solid looking logo. This is a point that kind of presents a barrier for a few people where you've learned what to do in Illustrator to create the outlines of shapes and you've ended up with a line drawing, but trying to figure out how to get from this to something that works as a solid shape can prove tricky. I'm going to go through that in a few steps. It's not too complex and just show you some of the reasons why not to take a simpler approach. The obvious way to do this for most people would be simply to reverse the properties of their design. In this case, we've got a design that is created using black strokes with a negative fill, so there's nothing filling in at all. So I could just reverse that and have it so that I've got a solid black fill and then give the strokes something like a white outline to stand out against the background. In this case, I've defined all the shapes nice and clearly. We've got a little bit of an issue in terms of a couple of shapes that don't show up quite so well because their lines are missed out from the original construction of the logo. But there's a bigger problem in that if we place this against a colour background, if I take the background from this piece for example and pull that behind, we find that yeah, we've got the black logo but we've now got the white strokes. We could certainly keep going and we could grab the logo again, deselect the background, and for the strokes choose the colour of the background so it appears as though those lines are visible. We will have to do this every time we change the design. Every time we place it on something, we'd have to make sure the colours of the strokes were right, and that means it's not working as a monotone logo. So let's go back a few steps. What I can do here is take a couple more steps to turn this into a better version that gives us something along these lines where we've got clean, solid shapes with no strokes visible. To do this, I'm going to duplicate this shape down and show you the two parts that are necessary. What I want to do here is create the logo in two steps and stages. I want to create the whole object as a solid silhouette and then create another set of paths over the top that I can use to delete the lines and strokes from that object. Let's go through that step by step. I need two copies of the logo to do this, so I'll duplicate one across. On the first one, I'm going to grab all the paths that I'm using and I'm simply going to use the Pathfinder tool to hit Unite. This will turn these into a single solid shape, and if I reverse the properties here, there we've got a single solid black silhouette with no stroke. Now what's important here is this is still several objects. Even though when selected they are grouped together, I've got these three drips over on the left hand side and I've got the rest of the cup and saucer combo. In a little while I'm going to be using the minus front utility and it won't work on a group of objects. So I actually need to make sure Illustrator is treating these objects not as a group but as one compound path. This is where you have several objects that are visually separate but Illustrator treats them as a single outline. To do this I'm going to go to the object menu, go to compound path near the bottom and hit make. There's no visible change but that has locked all these together now as a single object rather than a group of objects. Okay, let's come over to our second version of the logo. This one I'm going to leave exactly as for the time being. The strokes are as I want them to be. I'm just going to go to Object, Path and Outline Stroke to turn the strokes themselves into vector objects. And as we've done previously, I'm then again going to hit Unite, which will connect all of these together. These are now filled in pathways, and if I just reverse the properties, we'll see that actually we've got all these individual outlines. So let's reverse those back so we've just got the solid fill area. And this is where we can begin then to use these two things together. I'm going to place these lines back on top of my silhouette. I'm just going to make sure they're visible by just selecting a quick colour to make sure they stand out nice and clearly. So let's move those back over the top of my previous item. Now getting these to align perfectly by hand is a little bit tricky. Visually that looks okay, but I knew from when I was positioning that actually this is not centered on the drawing underneath. Thankfully with these top paths selected as a group and the bottom ones as a compound path, we've got two individual items here. If I select them both, I can use the alignment tools. These are usually shown across the top of the screen rather, so I can horizontally and vertically center the two objects so that I know they are aligned perfectly. With that done, I'm ready to select the foreground and the background shapes and use minus front to simply cut away the paths. This gives us the same visual effect that we had a few minutes ago by giving a white stroke to the black shape, but the difference now is that if I take this block of colour, let's just ungroup that for a moment, let's pull that block of colour down, move this to the front and bring it in front of it. He says, there we go. we can see now that we don't have white paths there, we've got gaps through the logo. There's a couple of minor issues here. I've got this solid space inside the handle, and these objects are all grouped, so it's going to be easy enough to just ungroup those and delete the bits that I don't need. This path, and there's also a little mark hiding around down here that I want to delete, so let's kind of see if I can grab that one as well. Not letting me grab that, but I'll sort that out later. But at this point, I've got this solid logo. I'm also going to get rid of this disc here to show the drink in the cup. I think that adds a bit more visual contrast. And at this stage, if I grab all of those and just fill them white, we're back to the point we saw at the start with a much more solid looking logo. So the process there, just to repeat very quickly, is to take your line drawing and create 2 copies of it. One of them you're going to fill solidly to unite the objects as a single dark silhouette, and then create that as a compound path. The second version, you're going to outline the strokes, again, unite the outline shapes, and use them to cut away from your silhouette shape using minus front, giving you your finished logo.